know that you came for the snacks and not me, but that's okay. All right, so there's lots there, so help yourself. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Going to try to make this enjoyable, though. How many of you really like to get up and talk in front of large groups? No hands. Okay, let's go the other way. Who hates it? Who really hates public speaking? It's all right. Yeah, you're being truthful. There you go. Understood. Well, the thing is, that's one of the greatest fears of most people, is public speaking. But it doesn't have to be, right? Once you learn a few tricks and tips, it can be very easy, right? And it's one of those things that once you learn it and you got it, you can use it for the rest of your life. It'll help to push you forward faster than almost anything else. Is the ability to communicate. All right, so that's what this is all about, right? People talk about pitching and so forth, but it's really about communications. And oops, if I hurt the drawing, sorry about that. Okay. Now let's do it. So it's like anything else. Where are you going to go? If you don't know what your end destination will be, you probably won't get there, right? So everything, whether it's a pitch for a business plan competition, it's a book report, it's talking in front of another group for whatever reason, what's the goal and who are those people? That's really the key here. The key is the audience, right? So if I'm going to be talking to you, right, I'm going to use a vernacular language that you will understand. If I'm going to be teaching fifth graders, do you think I'd be talking the same way to fifth graders that I talk to you? What's the answer? No, not at all. So it's about understanding the audience, and it's about using a communications platform that people can relate to. Can we get you to move over? Yeah. Please. All right, and so we'll get to the reason I've asked you all to kind of condense in a moment. But first, again, the whole thing is to find a way to communicate. It's about, one person to another. That when I asked you that question, you knew what I was talking about instantly. You didn't have to think about it, right? That's communication, right? The problem is we have barriers to communication. A barrier could be just like we talked about between you and a fifth grader. A barrier could be language, a barrier could be ethnicity, education, it could be age, it could be a lot of different reasons. People all have their own concepts based on who they are and how they've grown up, how they've been educated, what environments they're in. Everybody's got their own viewpoint. So how do we talk to somebody where they all understand the same thing, the thing that you're trying to communicate, right? That's really the key. And it comes down to some basic stuff. Anybody know what this is? Bet if there's someone in the back of the room that knows. Why don't you explain what that is?
It's a phone.
That's it. When we were growing up, there were no electronics, no phones, no earbuds, nothing digital. This was a little device, 2 tin cans, usually soup cans, with a string, usually a piece of cord that you would hang your laundry. Yeah, we used to hang laundry outside because we didn't have washers and dryers. But if you stretch that, the vibration from the can will travel through the string and it can be heard on the other side. That's a primitive communication device. But there is no mistaking that it's a communication device. Things get a little bit trickier as we move through time to where we're at. So the digital messaging now becomes really much more difficult. So how do we do that? Let's start with this. Can I see again those hands of people that absolutely hate talking in front of groups? Okay, I have talked to you before. If you'll come down here, please.
Oh, no.
Oh, no is right. I warned you. Okay. All right. I want you to explain thermodynamics to the group. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. What I do want you to tell the group is I want you to do 20 seconds on the best vacation you ever had. Go.
Okay, so the best vacation I've ever had was when I was around middle school. I was around 7th grade. My parents and my family took me on a vacation. We went to Europe. We visited around 4 countries. We went to Germany.
That's enough. Did you have a hard time talking about that?
A little, yeah.
Yeah, but it came out, didn't it?
I did.
Didn't he do a good job? Someone who said he was terrified about speaking in public. He ripped it off. He didn't have to think about it. Why? Because he owned it, right? So lesson here, when you own the information, own the data, it's very easy to communicate, right? Once you started, you didn't want to stop, did you? You were rolling on, you were reliving that. Well, thank you for that. Okay, let's have another one. Who's somebody over here? Right? Everybody's putting their heads down. Somebody over here. Come on, I need a volunteer. Won't hurt, guaranteed. Somebody from this side of the room. Come on. Okay. Now you'll face the audience and you'll tell us about the most horrible date you ever had. I'm kidding. No. All right? Why don't you tell us about the most wonderful Christmas you ever had?
I have to say this most recent Christmas, because all of my family came down to our house, and it was just like, it was one of the rare moments where all of us were able to be in one place at the same time, at the same year, so it was like really nice. Like California family, even like a family member from Pennsylvania came down, so we were all together. So I think that was the best
Okay,
Christmas.
great. Thank you. Did anybody not understand what she was saying? So you communicated with each and every person. Did you all get something from that? That's all we're talking about. And we're just going to work today to do it in a little bit better, more refined way. Thank you so much. Okay, so with those two examples, we know now that it can be done. It's not an impossibility, even for those that are terrified. So, bringing it back to the business plan competition, part of the components of a good pitch is to understand what you're asking for. We call it the ask, okay? So it could be money, it could be attracting a team member or resources, it could be a lot of different things, right? But if we don't incorporate that, into our presentation, then the audience is never going to know what we want, our ask. So as we build this, it's not good enough just to say what our market size is and how whiz-bang our idea is, right? What are we trying to do here? What is our ask? What do we need? That's an important piece. Funding, services, sales, right? And whatever industry you're in will have certain language, jargon, use those words, right? And again, stay on point. What's the goal? So, anybody, what are you going to pitch? What's your concept? Yeah, what can you tell everybody really quickly? Is it a SaaS software? Is it a product?
Mystery box.
Okay, mystery box. There you go. So, bringing it back to here, what are you looking for to help you build your mystery box company? Okay, funding. Now, what industry are you in?
the voice kind of thing.
Your e-commerce, right?
Oh, yeah.
E-commerce subscription model, right? So now that you've identified what you need, funding for an e-commerce subscription model, makes it easier because now you can talk in a language that will resonate with those people, right? So everybody needs to do the same thing. So we're talking in the same language, got those soup cans stretched out, and the person on the other side understands what you're saying. So that's a critical piece to what we're going here. Otherwise, we're just talking to ourselves, right? So in a business plan competition, in a pitch competition, these are the things that are critical. If you write anything down, those are the things to make sure that you incorporate in your pitch. And why do we start with a problem? Because I can tell you right now, if you are going to try to build a startup company, to be rich, famous, to be the next Elon Musk, you will fail. That's not how it happens. If you want to do it to make a lot of money or be rich and famous, it's not going to happen. But if you solve a problem for a large enough market in such a unique way that you have a frictionless solution, now you talk. Now you may have something. Okay? So problem, solution, market size. Who has it? Who has that problem and how many people are there? And then your team. Why are you uniquely situated to solve that problem? Right? It's really difficult as a student to say what your team is. But this becomes really critical a little later on. And finally, number 5 trumps everything else. Traction or sales. If you've already got a product or a service and people are buying it, or they don't even have to give you any money. If somebody will trade you their contact information for your goods or services, isn't that traction? Think about Facebook. So Facebook started on campus, right, at Harvard, because Mark Zuckerberg wanted to meet young ladies and created this platform, and as it spread through each college, he went on and on and on, over 300 colleges. But he wasn't charging a dime for this thing, right? Still doesn't charge users, right, a dime for that. And how does he build a multi-billion-dollar company? It was the process, right? So he was attracting millions of dollars worth of investment when he was still just on campus before he went out to the public, because the investors could see he had a process for onboarding and getting new customers. He knew, and they proved it over and over again, that within 30 days of launching on a campus, 80% of everyone on that campus would have a Facebook account. And of that 80%, 70% would be on it every day. So it was easy for investors to extrapolate. You can do that on the campus. What can you do with 7 billion people on this planet? Now we can monetize, right? So that's why these things come together. If you had a team to do it, he could prove traction, market size was huge, problem and solution was a good fit. Unicorn, right? Unicorn is a company that's over $1 billion valuation. So these are the things. Make sure that you touch on these things, because the judges, and I'm a judge, will be looking for how well you articulated each of those points. And it's okay if you don't have traction or sales yet, right? You can do some projections, right? So this eye, hand thing is one of the reasons why I've tried to get you all to move in, because your job is, again, to communicate, but to communicate with everybody in the room. And if I have to play ping pong and look over here in this corner, hi, gotcha, and then back over here, that's a lot of work. So anytime you can get a chance to corral your audience, because it's not just you, the closest to me, that I'm talking to everyone, and everyone paid the same price to come right tonight, Whether you had a ticket or not, you were here, you made an investment, and you deserve to be communicated with. Not talked at, but we can tell. Human beings can tell when somebody's got you in your vision and they're paying attention to you, you know. Right? So that's critical. You're going to need to use your eyes, your voice, no voice, that's a pause, your hands, and your feet to help sell your concept. Right? So we don't stand with our hands in our pockets or across our chest. We certainly don't stick our finger in our ear or our nose or anywhere else, right? So it is about using your body and the tools that you have, your vision, your voice, your concentration, to communicate these points. Think you can all do that? I think so, now that you know, right? Make sure you can see everybody in the room and make sure you're really looking at those judges. Okay, moving on. So, it is that you are the star, and it is about you. So does anybody know what I mean about the jockey and the horse? Anybody? Okay. So investors are going to put money, real cash, into startups, right? I've been fortunate enough, my last startup I raised $1.4 million. What I'm teaching you now is all part of a system that I teach that has raised millions and millions and millions of dollars for my students. And it all comes down to this concept of jockey or a horse. So if you were at a horse race, you're going to bet, right? It says the jockey is such and such name, and this is their history. The horse is this the name and the horse's history. Some people will bet on a jockey and some people will bet on the horse. When it comes to investing, investors bet on the jockey. Why? Because as startups go, the product or the service iterates or changes based on the market and based on your research and your connection with your customer. Right? So the horse is going to change. It's hard to bet on that. The jockey, the founders who are driving this, they're the key. Are they flexible enough to make changes when the market slaps them in the face? Or when their product doesn't work and they've got to start all over? Either pivot or a bunch of small iterations. So the investors are investing in you, the founder. So you need to stand up here and you need to sell yourself. That you have courage, that you have grit. And when the first bad thing happens, you don't go, oh, I'm going home to mommy. That's not it. It's, do you have the courage and the skill set to take my money as an investor and make it multiply? I'm investing in you. I'm investing in you, right? So when you are up here, it is your stage. You are the star of the play, the movie. Feel that way and make sure through this connection that they know that you're the star. That's a big deal. And so it takes a little practice to get that part down. We're going to talk about that in a moment. All right, so this whole thing, everybody, especially since we have such good cell phones, people like to put it on their phone and then read it from the phone, right? We don't do that. Pros don't do that, right? That's for low entry level, right? We're better than that. So we're going to write out our presentation because it's always time dependent, whether you have 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or 30 minutes, and I've done presentations in all of those. You've got to work it out, but never, ever, ever memorize it. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But the educators, psychologists in education tell us that you need to read, see, hear something at least 16 times consistently to where it's embedded and you own it, right? So you've heard maybe a tune on the radio, and then you hear it again for a new product, and again. After a while, you've seen enough times that tune is playing in your head, even when you don't want it, right? You're going to do the same thing, but with your own presentation, because you're going to practice it. Because what happens when you don't own your own presentation can be pretty daunting. So I'm going to show you something.
My company is Tower Paddleboards. I'm seeking $150,000 in exchange for 10% of my company. What if I told you the fastest growing water sport in the world was something that each of you could master in about 20 minutes? It's called stand-up paddleboarding. Stand-up paddleboarding is absolutely exploding. It's coming to every beach, every river, and every lake in the world. It's got the cool, soulful appeal of surfing, yet it's so easy to do that all of you can do it. My company is it's so easy. You can do it with your friends. You can do it with your child. You can even do it with your dog. It's Can you tell us more about it? Sure. Yeah. Stand-up paddleboarding is the fastest growing water sport in the world. We know that.
Don't worry, it's only your biggest moment in your life.
That's what happens when you try to memorize. Every time. It wasn't just because he was on TV. It's what happens under pressure. But you practice at least 16 times, faithfully, and you start to break it into pieces. So you could start in the end, you can start in the middle, you can start at the beginning, but you know it without memorizing it because you've made that information your own. Then, when things happen, in fact, in investor pitches, sometimes investors will push a pile of books off the table onto the floor just to see what you'll do. Or they'll have an assistant come in and say they have a telephone call, and they'll go out of the room just when you're talking to see what happens when you come back. Right? They're testing you. Do you have what it takes to take their money and build something? So you're prepared for these things by, again, owning your own information, right? So this never happens to you. It happens to everybody. Every month, across the walkway here in 302 in Grimm Hall, TCVM has an evening where we talk about these things and have great guest speakers and people who've done it before, and a pitch competition. And some of my friends who come into this competition that are seasoned veterans will stumble in the pitch because it's a new pitch to them and they memorized it instead of done the work to own it. So everybody does this, right? You can overcome this easily by doing the homework. So here's the takeaways, because we're running down on our time tonight. These are the things that you now have, right? You have the fact that we want to communicate with everybody in the room, not just the pretty face in the front row. I'm kidding.
That's no kidding, that's true.
But everybody in that room knows that they matter to you, right? And therefore, you will matter to them. You've been clear and concise in what you're asking for, what your goal is, the vernacular, the words that you've used. how you reported yourself, right? You didn't have fancy nervous feet and dancing all over. You stayed and you talked. People could hear you way in the back in the cheap seats, in the back of the hall that's right next door, right? That's where we were last month. And people were scattered, and the people who were pitching had to hit voice to go all the way to the back row. Whatever it is, you now will be prepared for it and be able to do it. I mean, it's a large hall that you'll be pitching in. Be ready, right? And to do it, don't do things with yourself that is detracting. If you're moving around too much and too fidgety and got your hands going everywhere, it's hard to concentrate on what you're saying. So try to control them. But use your hands when it's important to get a point across. Or any other mnemonic or theatrical trick that you could use to get people to pay attention to you. And sometimes it's just being quiet. Then I can start and talk to you about the things that are important for both of us, right? Now you listen. Don't be afraid of any of that. Have the courage to take what we've talked about here tonight and get on stage. It will set you apart from everybody else. That's what we're going to do. We're going to believe in yourself. And that's how we win competitions. That's how we build companies, by believing in yourself and using proven systems, techniques. Okay? So we've run down the clock. I might have another minute or two for some questions. I'm open. I tell you everything from my shoe size to my favorite food. Go ahead. Yes?
On the presentation day, do you recommend we start with like a hook or like something to like get the audience like?
I love it. If you could do it with authenticity, that it doesn't look hokey, okay? So one of the young men that I've been working with for 10 years now from Cal State Fullerton, he's building a stem cell company. In fact, he's raising $20 million right now. He's already raised 3, and they burned through that, and he's raising another $20 million. When he gets on stage and asks for money, first thing, he wears a lab coat. You know, everybody else is either regular clothes or dressed up, usually dressed up. He wears a lab coat. In each pocket, he pulls out a baggie. He has 5,000 Tic Tacs. They look like pills. He says, this is the number of painkillers the average person with rheumatoid arthritis will take in their lifetime. And he lets them go, he drops them, and they hit that stage and they make a lot of noise and everybody's paying attention, right? He used that one night, raised 20 years. He hadn't even started, got to the real company yet. Just in his formation, he raised $25,000 from Cox that night. I saw him raise $1 million in a pitch competition doing it, and again, he's raising $20 million right now. So you got to have the goods behind it. But you are so right. If you have that hook without being hokey, right? Then you use it. Good question. Thank you. And for that, you get to have a Rice Krispies bar. Anybody else? Question? Okay. Yes, sir.
I got a question for the room. Who are the best presenters you guys can see, and you get to see them every week if you want to? The best presenters that you will see in your lifetime. It's not a trick question.
I would,
And you can see them every week.
if I was to answer, I would say it's on Sunday.
See them on Sunday. You guys figured it out? Preachers. Preachers are the best presenters, the best speakers, the most practiced presenters. Generally.
True believers.
Broad brush, of course, there's some that are better than others. but they're the best ones. It's what they do for a living. They take a subject and they get 20 minutes, the good ones. Ones that aren't so good take a little longer, in my opinion. Depends. But depending on what it is, 20 to 30 minutes to convey a critically important subject to their audience. And not all their audience is their congregation. They're speaking to people who maybe are walking in for the first time and are hearing their pitch as to why they should come back. Good preachers are the best presenters in the world. Good ones.
Always been that way.
Yeah. Jesus is pretty good.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for listening to my tips and techniques. I wish you all the best. And I'll see you in the competition. Do you have a question?
No question.
You were blessing me?
Yeah.
I'll take it. I need all the help I can get. Thank you.
Thank you so much.